1942, Kayo Erwin was 17 years old. He had an older brother in World War II. Kayo joined the Navy to go find his brother.
Tonight in The Price of Freedom, Josh Rowe has Kayo Erwin's story. Josh.
Kim, Calvin, Lewis Kayo Erwin didn't see his brother until he came home from the war, but he saw a lot of things in the war, including an important secret mission that helped end the war and the worst disaster in U.S. naval history. This segment is sponsored by Food City.
Mayors, governors.
The big room in Kayo Erwin's house is filled with books, photos, and letters, all reminders of the summer of 1945.
And this ship was commissioned in 1932.
The USS Indianapolis saw a lot of war in the South Pacific.
I was at Tarawa, the Marshalls, the Marianas, the Gilberts, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Iwo Jima, Okinawa hit with a suicide plane, killed 9 men and wounded 38.
It was sent back to California, repaired, and sent out on a top-secret mission.
That's when we took the component parts of the atomic bomb on and carried them to Tinian and dropped them off there.
The sailors on board didn't know what their cargo was at the time, but those components were assembled, and that was the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in World War II. With that part of the mission complete, the USS Indianapolis was on the way to Okinawa just after midnight, July 30th, 1945. 2 torpedoes hit the USS Indianapolis.
The torpedoes hit up here. Powder room is back down here blowing. The second torpedoes hit back here.
Within minutes, it was sunk.
I run down the side and I dove in and swam as far as I could to get away from the ship, keeping me, pulling me down. And all I could see is just the last tail end of the ship going down.
There were just under 1,200 men on board the ship. 900 sailors and Marines survived the attack. They were floating at sea, only with a life jacket on their back.
That sun would eat you up. Hot in the daytime, cold at night. You'd pray for. If it's night, you'd pray for day to get warm. If it's in daytime, you'd pray for night for it to get some cool.
They hooked their life jackets together and floated in big groups. For several days, the Navy didn't know they were missing.
Well, you prayed a lot, and you tried to watch everything you do, and sharks would get so close to you, you'd pull up your legs just as far as you could and hold them up out there, keep them sharp from getting your legs, and just be just as quiet as you could get. First time we started scaring them off splashing water, we found out it's the wrong thing to do. They thought it was fish and it attracts sharks, so we didn't do that no more.
Kayo Erwin and the rest of the survivors spent 4 days and 5 nights in the shark-infested waters. Of the 900 who survived the sinking of the ship, only 317 made it home. They were spotted in the water and the rescue started on August 2nd. Mr. Erwin says the sharks killed most of those men.
Just losing their mind. And they'd go so far, and sometimes you see them just take off the life jacket, and then you wouldn't see them no more. And then you'd hear, if it's getting about dusk dark or something, you hear screaming after a while, and then you knew a shark at them.
Kayo Erwin eventually made it home to Chattanooga, and in 1960, the survivors started having reunions in Indianapolis. He says he's only missed one.
You go over there, you lose a lot of men and everything, and there's no good in war.
Mr. Erwin is one of 22 survivors of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis who are still living.
Freedom, we mark Black History Month.
From D-Day to Iwo Jima, African Americans served bravely and helped win the war. Josh Rowe joins us now with a story of a local man who spent 2 years in Europe in World War II. Josh.
Kim and Calvin, Army veteran Charlie Kyle spent 1944 preparing for war and fighting through Europe. Mr. Kyle had a stroke in December, but he's improving now. A few days ago, he sat down and told me a story. 1943, you joined the Army?
Yeah.
Why'd you enlist in the Army?
I couldn't help it. They drafted me.
Charlie Kyle served in the 598th Ordinance Ammunition Company. With your unit, it was all African American men?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a lieutenant, and the lieutenant was Caucasian.
598th was first sent to England to train and wait for the landing on the beaches of Normandy. Charlie Kyle was there on D-Day.
Dead soldiers. I'm a dead soldier. floating in the water just like you throw a bunch of wood in the water.
He was there with the Allied forces. They fought for months through France all the way to the Battle of the Bulge in December of 1944.
It was so cold, they tried to hide it. We was hiding in an old German prison camp to survive. And they knew we were there, and they bombed it.
They bombed it.
Bombed it. And it looked like hell broke loose.
Charlie Kyle spent 2 years in Europe, helping the U.S. and the Allied forces win the war, fighting side by side with white soldiers.
You shoulder to shoulder, jump in the same foxhole together.
He came back in 1945. It was almost a decade before the civil rights movement officially started in the U.S. One afternoon, he was on a bus trying to get back home.
Our bus stopped at a restaurant between Fort Knox and Nashville to have lunch. And to tell the truth, I didn't know what I went to work for. The management of the restaurant said we all white and black got off the bus together. And he said, we can't serve you blacks in here. So y'all have to go around to the back, and we'll hang your lunch out the window. And the good part about it, the whole busload of white and blacks walked out the restaurant.
He says that was a very hurtful time in his life, but he also told us he wants to make one thing clear.
I'm proud of the United States. Something I helped save.
The United States Armed Forces was segregated until 1948. Charlie Kyle came home to Chattanooga in 1945. He's lived here ever since.